Hi everyone, welcome to this new video and happy Halloween! Today I'm going to tell you about a creepy ancient tradition from ancient Rome. If you've ever played Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, you've probably wondered who Romulus followers were and if they really existed. Well, today I'm going to blow your mind by telling you that there was something like them in ancient Rome, an old ritual called Lupercalia. Okay, so now imagine you're a 12-year-old living in early Rome, a Rome not yet made of shiny marble but full of wooden huts and clay walls. It's a place where you're surrounded by nature and wolves are part of your daily life. They are dangerous, sure, attacking you and your animals, but they are also linked to your tradition because Romulus and Remus were raised by the famous she-wolf. One day, after the second full moon from the winter solstice, your father takes you to a sacred cave at the foot of the Palatine. This is the spot where Romulus and Remus were saved by the she-wolf, the so-called Lupercale. Here, a group of older boys are waiting for you to begin a strange ritual. They sacrifice a goat to an ancient god named Lupercus. They take the blood from the sacrifice and spread it on your forehead, and then they clean it with a towel soaked in milk. And after that, for no reason, everyone starts laughing. Isn't that creepy enough? But unfortunately, it doesn't end here. You are led into the cave where Romulus and Remus were once fed by the she-wolf. Here, you eat the goat's meat, drink wine, and as you do, you begin to lose control. With the others, you become part of a wild group, just like wolves. At this point, you are no longer just a child. You've crossed into adolescence. You're now a creature between childhood and adulthood, just like a wolf living in and out of society. Then, in the last part of the ritual, the young men run through the streets of Rome with strips of goat skins in their hands, hitting the ground and women. About these wolf priests, or Luperci, we only know that they were young men who every year celebrated this tradition in the 15th February. We also know that they were divided into two brotherhoods, the Quintili and the Fabiani, named after the ancient Roman families who supported Romulus and Remus when Rome was founded. As already said, the feast took place in February, a month dedicated to purification and fertility. The whole ritual was meant to bring new life and energy to the city right before the coming of spring. The Luperci were young because they embodied the energy of the wolf, not only living on the edge, but also young, wild, and untamed. In fact, in Rome, youth was seen as something powerful and not shaped by the rules of society. Okay, I just want to change the subject for a moment to point out that Ezio is happily jumping around in the famous octagonal room of Nero's Domus Aurea. And as an architect, I really want to say a few things about it. The Domus Aurea was built at the will of Emperor Nero in the 1st century AD, and it was a project that was never fully completed because Nero died before it was finished. It was meant to be a sort of private city within the center of Rome, and it was called the Domus Aurea, or better, the Golden House, because all the spaces that were built were covered with marble and colorful decorations. But as I said, only a small part of this grand project was actually completed, including the famous octagonal hall. This place is actually the heart of the Domus Aurea. Above, there is a kind of dome with a central oculus, and it lets in natural light. Something even more incredible about this place are the flat arches, about 5 meters long, carrying the roof. The side spaces are bright thanks to openings in the vault. The whole design works with the light, and the oculus even acts as a kind of sun clock. At certain times, the sunlight hits the central room, where water creates small fountains. The light and water together can even form rainbows. There is so much to say about this place, but let me know in the comments if you'd like me to talk about it more in another video. But anyway, going back to the feast, the Lupercalia was older than Rome itself. Some people suggested it came from Arcadia in Greece, others that it was tied to Romulus and Remus, but everyone agreed it was ancient and powerful. And it lasted very long, because even after Rome became Christian, people still celebrated it in secret. Bad habits die hard, right? This feast also has a deeper meaning of purification. The Latin word februare actually means to purify, and that's where the month February takes its name. Rituals like this one existed everywhere, not only in Rome, because the wolf often represented both danger and courage, wildness and unity. An animal to fear, but yet to admire. And so we understood that this ritual had two reasons to exist, for fertility and to purify. And I think all of this kind of answers a question. Why did Luperci hit the ground and women with their strips of goat skin? Well, because it was related to fertility and purification, of course. All the women who voluntarily wanted to get pregnant showed their hands and backs and were hit by the young Luperci with their strips. And what about the term Lupercalia? Well, it may come from the Latin lupus parcere, referring to the mercy of the she-wolf for Romulus and Remus, or maybe from lupus arcere, that means to drive the wolf away, linked to Lupercus protecting herds. Or maybe from the Lupercale cave, where the she-wolf nursed Romulus and Remus, but anyway, we are not sure about the origins of the name. We know something more about the Luperci, and late sources describe Luperci wearing masks, covered in mud, and wearing goat skins. Anyway, nothing is sure because over the centuries the tradition changed, and of course, its origin is absolutely hard to determine. I would just like to add that the idea of the teenager as a figure between two words fits well with another idea probably used for the followers of Romulus in the game, the velites. The velites were soldiers in the early Roman army, and they wore wolf skins just like the followers of Romulus in the game. They were young soldiers who didn't fight in the regular legion because in ancient Rome, people could only fight when they were adults, and they weren't considered Roman citizens unless they served in the army, so they were in a strange position between childhood and adulthood. They were part of the society but also outside of it. And this shows how these young soldiers were both included in and separated from society, living in a kind of in-between world very similar to the Luperci. And what about the cave? Did it really exist, or was just something invented? Well, I'm happy to tell you that in 2007 archaeologists were exploring under the Palatine Hill and found a hidden cave 7 meters below ground, and that cave is believed to be the Lupercale. Something that I find even more interesting is that the cave is beautifully decorated with mosaics, shells, and a white eagle that is the symbol of Emperor Augustus. In fact, it seems like Augustus had restored the cave centuries earlier to connect himself with Romulus, the first king of Rome. He even built his place nearby and claimed to be the new founder of the city. And for those curious about the story that connects Romulus and Remus to the she-wolf and the founding of Rome, here is a quick look at the story. According to the myth, Romulus and Remus were two brothers that when were babies were left in a basket on the river Tiber by a cruel king of Alba Longa, a city that doesn't exist anymore. The river carried them to the cave called Lupercale on the Palatine Hill, where a she-wolf came to drink. She found the babies and fed them, saving their lives. And when they grew up, Romulus founded the city of Rome. And about the cave, it is still there today, but is closed to the public deep under the Palatine. And with this myth, I'd like to end today's videos. I hope you found it interesting. This was my first long video, and I really hope you enjoyed listening to these stories while watching Ezio climbing through the mysterious undergrounds of Nero's Domus Aurea, searching for the followers of Romulus. Let me know in the comments if there is something specific you'd like me to talk about in future videos, but for now, I wish you a happy Halloween wherever you are, and thanks for watching!